Welcome to the Echo Tips podcast. Dude.
Here's a sneak peek into what we're going to cover in this week's episode of the Echo Tips podcast.
But this is enough that a lot of people are going to stop using their Echoes, don't you think?
I would imagine that a fair amount are going to stop using them.
Hello, and welcome to the Echo Tips podcast. It's good to have you all with us this week, and our theme or topic for the show is related to a little bit of a hair on fire moment that's been going on in media lately, connected with an email sent out by Amazon about disabling a feature on some of the Echoes that disabled the ability to, well, when turned on, would disable the ability to send voice recordings to the cloud. And what that potentially means, what other features are connected with that. Is it a real privacy thing? You know, some of the headlines are, all of my recordings are going to the cloud. They're being listened to, everyone, you know, and it just goes on and on. But needless to say, we're going to break this down. I think around the 14th, maybe there was an article that came out about it, and that was followed up by TechCrunch. Ars Technica, I think, originally broke the story, then TechCrunch possibly, and then I heard about it on the Daily Tech News Show. So we're gonna kind of take a look at some of that info today. Try to break that down basically for you, and it took a little while digging into this to kind of get into it. So, and this is going to be a shorter form episode this week. I'm not going to put the little typical like third party sponsorship thing in here this week. I'm just going to kind of keep it. I'm real busy this week. This show is actually getting out a little late, so apologize to our returning listeners about that. To our new listeners, we'd like to welcome you to the show, though. Welcome to the Echo Tips podcast. We deal with all things related to our A-Lady devices and Amazon Echoes. I'm the host of the show. My name is David Ward. I'm an assistive technology trainer, and we're in our 7th season, and so we have a huge back catalog, over 300 episodes. If you're looking to solve a problem, have a question, there's a good chance it's in our back catalog. So you can either scroll back through your podcast player of choice, but if you find that a little limiting, you can go to our blog at CertDoctor.com. Click on blog, and you should find a recent blog posting that has a pretty in-depth listing of all our past episodes and a direct link to the MP3. So hopefully that will help you out. Although at the tail end of the show, we'll mention some ways you can reach out to me with thoughts or suggestions. If it's something we haven't covered, or there's something new, or something's changed, I would love to hear about it. Okay. So before we get too far in the weeds, this is usually where I would say now we're going to go to a message about our show, but I'm actually just going to press on and get right into the meat of our matter. So as I said, there were these different articles that came out from Ars Technica, and then the TechCrunch. I think they hardly did any investigations at all. I mean, I found the article really salacious and embarrassing, maybe not as bad as Ars Technica's title. But anyway, nonetheless, I think that was the article that I clicked on and got from the show notes from the Daily Tech News Show with Tom Merritt. And Tom and his crew does a fantastic job on their content and the like. But nonetheless, I feel like this is not exactly clear what's happening here, and I've had to do some digging to try and elicit really what's going on, what this feature is that we're losing, and how it may be connected to the A-Lady AI Plus that's going to be coming out in the future. So anyway, we're going to go to that episode here of DTNS and let you hear that. That kind of sums up a whole bunch of core points. Although then I'll come back and we'll do a more thorough, in-depth analysis, maybe debunking some of the aspects of what this is really talking about. So let's go to that clip now.
Amazon sent an email to customers who had chosen to process voice commands on device. That is an option you had to say, like, don't ever send my recordings to the cloud, just process them on device. They can't do that anymore. That option will be disabled starting March 28th. The option prevented your voice from being sent to Amazon servers at all. And Amazon, especially several years ago, was found to not always be safeguarding that data as well as people thought they should. So now now you won't be able to say, don't send those recordings on. It reduced the functionality a little bit, but not a lot. So there were a number of people that did this, but Amazon's promising to bring in its brand new voice assistant technology this summer, and that needs the cloud. It needs those bigger GPUs, which is why they're probably doing this. Amazon says, however, it will no longer store recordings. So even though you're sending them to the cloud, it says it will delete them after processing. But this is enough that a lot of people are going to stop using their Echoes, don't you think?
I would imagine that a fair amount are going to stop using them. But I bet that the utility of it, that there's going to be more people who are going to actually go out and buy new Echoes just because there's new stuff that, this is like ChatGPT, but it's Alexa. So I think that there's going to be more people like that than there will be that are say, you know what, this is just too far. The pail's been kicked too far for me. I am too security conscious and can't do it.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind is if you have Voice ID where it can tell who's talking to it, you will have to turn this off by March 28th or you will lose that voice print. Now, it's not the end of the world. You can retrain it if you really want to, but there are a couple of little things to read. If you did get this email and skipped over it, you might want to pull it out of the trash bin and read over it again just to make sure you're set up. Unless you're just like, you know what, I'm going to delete this thing and get out of there. I don't imagine the majority of people using Echoes have this option on, but I know there's a number of them.
Okay, so let's break that down a little bit. The more I listened to it, Tom's take there towards the beginning was pretty solid. It had that one little clip in there that I put in the front of our show, just to, kind of like a wow moment, kind of like, yeah, people are going to stop using their A-ladies. So let's start with some of the core. What his reference in his show notes was the TechCrunch article, which pretty much looked like they did hardly any research at all and pretty much just referenced an Ars Technica article, which was a little more, even more inflammatory. They both had kind of very negative slants and totally just like, I don't know. They brought up some factual materials from the past, but the whole fitting of the puzzle pieces together, I don't think was done very well. And I think even now, some of the things that Tom mentioned there in those clips is questionable, the accuracy of it. So, because I could not find the email. I did not get the email, and yet I get seemingly every imaginable email, anything to do with the A-Lady and Amazon, I couldn't find the email. I couldn't find the link to the email. And maybe it is out there on Ars Technica or TechCrunch's page. I'm sorry if I couldn't find it, but I couldn't seem to find it. So then I went and tried to find press releases on Amazon's site. And I think that's where the rubber really met the road. And later, Googling this and looking it up, I do feel like The Verge and AP did a much more appropriate kind of headlines and topics on this, which is, this was a setting that was not on by default. So, yes, I suppose there's people who went in and turned it on, but I don't know how many of those people were, as Tom kind of ended on the final note there. I don't know how many. And to be fair, I've been doing this for a long time, over 300 episodes and 7 seasons, and I never knew this feature was there. And I went to try and look for it. It must have been already pulled out of my A-Lady app because I couldn't even find it. It's described as being under the devices section, then go to the device that's compatible with, which, by the way, is modern devices, and then go to settings, then go under general, and you should find this do not send voices. And I looked under communication, I looked under adaptive listening, I looked under a whole bunch of different categories, follow-up mode. I didn't see anything like that. So it might have already been pulled out of my app. But to be fair, I've never seen this feature before. And this feature was only available on relatively modern devices. I think like the Echo 4 or 5s and up, a handful of the shows, but not some of the most current stuff. So like the 21, I don't think was ever mentioned in any press, any articles I ever saw. Although, like I said, the reporting on this topic was all over the place. So I think that lends itself, if the 21 and the newest 15 didn't have it in here, that there was a signal that they were going to deprecate this feature or pull it out anyway, that it wasn't being used, and it wasn't, they were going to retool it maybe for a future iteration. So what was the feature? That's the thing you might be wondering. My voice recordings are now going to the cloud. Your voice recordings were always going to the cloud. From day one, the Pringle can, your voice things were going up to the cloud. Now, you had a ton of management features on that. And remember, it only records when you say the wake word, and then you give it a command, turn on the lights, what's the weather, then it cuts off at the end and then sends that up to the cloud. And you could go up and listen to the recording. So that's what really boggled my mind, was some of the way this was being told. Like it was a feature that was always on and always being used, and they were taking it away. No. You can pull it up on Amazon's site, do a Google of Amazon.com or aboutamazon.com, which is like their business blog press release division, and keyword search for ALEXA, and then in quotes, do not send, quote. And you'll pop right up to this feature and a description of what it does and how it could be turned on. It wasn't, there's no evidence that I've seen that it was on by default. And I think that might be a sign that it never was good enough to do what it was supposed to do. Now, interestingly enough, it did something I never thought the Echoes, not even the modern Echoes like the shows, could do, or even the Echo Dot 4 or 5s. And that was onboard dictation and transcription. Onboard, on the fly, only for English, transcription. And so what it would do is I would say, hey, lady, what is the weather like? Or what is the weather report? And on device, it had a small engine in there that would transcribe that into text and send the text up to the cloud. So the request ultimately was going to the cloud anyway, but just not a recording. It was just a transcript. And I think that's pretty cool. Because one, I didn't imagine these devices that we pay practically nothing for would have a chip that could do that, and they had software on board that could do that. I am really kind of blown away that was possible. I guess maybe I shouldn't be terribly surprised, because the iPhone and other devices have moved to a local processing of dictation quite a while ago, at least a couple of years. But then again, they got huge honking processors, and there's several $100, dollars, if not $1,000 for an iPhone these days. And that's like a computer unto itself with like 12 cores and stuff. This is a little, like Dot I got on sale for $25 or something, at full retail was $50, and it had a processor that could do that. I was surprised. But I read it right off of Amazon's website, so I can't deny that it had been a feature. Now, like I said, I couldn't find the email about this. I couldn't find a press release, anything about March 28th. To be fair, I started to back off just because I'm really short on time. I couldn't really dig into that. So maybe y'all can find a press release documenting this for March the 28th. I think TechCrunch even said Amazon got back with him. That kind of, to me, validated the story more than anything, although I couldn't quite exactly delineate what they had told them that was different than the quotes they were quoting from Ars Technica already. But like I said, I think the AP and The Verge, based on their headlines, seem to be doing a much better job of this, which was kind of like a defunct feature nobody used is being removed. All right? But to me, admittedly, I think it was kind of a cool feature. Now, Tom highlighted there about why they might be doing this, and I think he's totally wrong on that regard. I don't think it has anything to do, well, it may have something to do with the fact they want to educate the new A-Lady Plus AI engine, and maybe allow a pipeline for more data to feed into that. Honestly, I don't think they'll probably do that because they don't want to poison the engine, but they may allow it to do that. Now, admittedly, I want to make this clear. You can go to the privacy settings and do all this stuff already. You can clear your entire history. You can say only after 3 months, clear everything. I want you to delete all the home automation requests I make. I want you to clear all the times it thought the fire alarm and the dog barked and that went off. There's a huge swath of ways you can go in there. And I checked. There still is a checkbox that says, do not allow Amazon to analyze my recordings heuristically, computerly, programmically, or by human auditors. And there's a checkbox that still says that. So a lot of the hysteria up there about people listening to the recordings and stuff. Now, Tom did highlight there is a checkered history with Amazon, and TechCrunch alluded to that and a few others. I think that history is kind of way in the past and was kind of a one-off screw-up kind of thing. I do feel like they maybe tried to cover their butts or something. I don't know. It was connected with the kids program. And at some point, when parents would transition their kids, I believe, and I'll have to go back and look at the story, but you can go back and check it. Anyway, they got into trouble because some of the recordings for kids that were not supposed to be retained or deleted were still being retained or hadn't got flushed entirely out of the system. So they got slapped on the wrist for that. They did lose some lawsuits on that. I can't remember exactly how that all came down. But, as a rule, these tools have been in there and are fantastic. And this dictation thing, it was never on by default, and nobody, and hardly probably anybody, I never even knew it was in there. And so, but that brings up a unique question too. So one, it could be the fact that the AI in the future, this maybe could be a window to allow it to be educated further and quicker. I would say one of the things they brought out about the A-Lady at the A-Lady event was her ability to understand inflection and a tone of voice. And you're not going to get that from a transcript, right? Not unless the transcript's typing in, he was angry when he said this, right? That's not going to happen. So I can see that being an important part feeding into it. The tone can be actually conveyed up to the cloud. But historically, just let's refresh. From the beginning of the Echo, recordings were always sent up to the cloud. Only later, if you had a more advanced Echo, in the last couple of years, 2-3 years really, and you turn the feature explicitly on, would it have worked? And I don't even know how well it would have worked. It never was set to be on by default, so I'm kind of guessing it never was that good. Because the potential bandwidth savings to Amazon would have been fantastic if all they're getting is little chirps about Dave asked what the weather was and not a full MP3 compressed file, an audio recording of me saying, with all the background noise and everything. So I could see, I'm thinking personally they're probably going to be maybe later retooling this. Admittedly, after they get the A-Lady Plus off the ground and they get it smarter and all of that, they might come back and circle to this because it could be a huge bandwidth settings. Now, Tom mentioned another thing about voice ID in there and some other tangential settings. I saw conflicting reports in the Virgin Tech, other things about this. Now, admittedly, on Amazon's site, it does link some of the things together and kind of delineates that if you turn this do not send voice recordings to Amazon feature on, which meant it sends transcripts of what you said, it just didn't send voice recordings, what was I thinking? That it could impair other features like adaptive listening, which is where maybe you have long pauses in your speech, or maybe you have a speech impediment of some kind and you're struggling to get your words out. Adaptive listening would kind of it would be a little more flexible with not cutting off the end of your request or something like that. I think maybe a follow-up mode. I don't know if they mentioned follow-up mode. Some of the kids modes, where the Echo will read a book to them and ask, "What did the dinosaur say?" or what color was the school bus? And you'd say yellow. There were some of these interactive things that it would potentially disable if you would turn that feature on. But once again, it's going away. Probably nobody used it, and so I don't think it really mattered. Now, Tom alluded to the voice ID thing. I think I saw conflicting reports on whether it would or would not affect that. I don't think it's going to make a difference. Worst case scenario, if the voice ID stuff was being stored locally and being used on the local processor, and they disable that functionality with the transcript feature somehow linked to that on device, then maybe when it resets, you may need to redo your voice ID up in the cloud function. Although other outlets I read seem to suggest that the voice ID was up in the cloud and not local, so I don't really understand exactly. I would imagine voice ID, though, one way or the other, will continue or be reborn eventually under the A-Lady Plus. So hopefully that helps answer your questions. By all means, you have all sorts of privacy controls in the A-Lady app, not to mention verbally if you have that enabled. I think it's enabled by default, to be honest. You just say, "Hey, lady, delete everything I ever said." She goes, "You sure? Yes." Delete everything I said today. Delete everything, It's you have quite a bit of control over what you're doing. And even when they were allowing people, although admittedly, I think you still had to have the box checked to say you allowed people to audit your stuff on rare occasions, that was still probably a one-off in very unusual circumstances. I mean, even the paperwork I see by the most inflammatory things is like, thousands of recordings were listened to by, a few Amazon. 1,000? Like, really? 1,000? There's 600 million of these devices. Really? I don't know. I find the inflammatory speech just kind of crazy sometimes. And to be clear, guys, everybody has done this. This is the way Google Assistant has worked. This is the way Siri worked. I mean, they've all kind of worked forward to this model where more and more could be processed on device. I was surprised this was ever on the A-Lady in the first place, on the Echoes, and just a handful of devices at that. And like I said, the newest devices don't seem to support it either. So, in my thinking, if they were to move back to this onboard device, which is to save them a lot of money and potentially bandwidth, I think they're probably going to retool based on new chips, maybe new architectures, getting tensor chips on device potentially for AI processing and stuff too. Maybe they get different models on there for better speech recognition. Admittedly, this was only for English. And so I think that's probably potentially where this is going. Anyway, I've been rambling long enough. If you have a thought or suggestion for a future episode, you're welcome to reach out to me at Echo Tips Podcast at, did I say that wrong? Let's try that again. Echo Tips Podcast at CertDoctor, CERT Doctor, DOCTOR.com. But as always, we thank you. And we'll try and have a show for you guys next week, although I'm really slammed right now. So there is a possibility it'll come out late. We'll get something out to you guys. It just might be a little late next week. But anyway, once again, we thank you for listening.